Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's GEFA 101 webinar 3. We have a lot of folks still entering the room, so we'll give them a moment and we will start shortly. Okay, good morning again, everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar today. This is the third in a series of webinars that GEFA has been putting on called GEFA Water 101. We want to welcome you again and just kind of give you an outline of what we'll be talking about today. So first, we have some logistics to go through, and then we have 3 speakers that we'll be introducing you to this morning. My name is Stacey Isaac Barraza. I'm with a small consulting firm called IB Environmental, and we'll be assisting GEFA today with facilitating the webinar. So the main goal of these webinars in this series is really to empower you as local government staff in getting the loan application process started with GEFA, even before you take on external consultants, etc. The staff at GEFA and EPD are quite approachable. So take advantage of the information you hear on today's webinar, but also feel free to reach out afterwards because they are here to help. So in the previous 2 webinars, we got some questions about how the state environmental review process works. And so today, GEFA staff have invited their colleagues from EPD to work directly in that area to work you through. Let's see, I'm getting some information here. Let me just make sure that all the logistics are working well. Some folks are saying they're getting some feedback, so just give me a second here to see if I can make some adjustments. Okay, hopefully this is better. Let's just look at the GoToWebinar panel and how you can participate most fully in the event today. So there is a white arrow in a red rectangle, and if you will click on that, you can toggle back and forth between sort of minimizing that control panel or expanding it. On there, you will see the raise hand feature. So we'll ask some questions sort of on the fly today, and you can use that to respond to the question. We also will be including a couple of polls today so that you can give feedback. We want to make sure that you're staying engaged and understanding the material that's being shared. I think those are the main things. We want to encourage you to enter your questions though, right? So you've taken the time, you're here, you may as well get the questions you've always wondered about answered today. So do enter your questions into the questions box. And we'll try to address those usually at the end. We'll save all the questions for the end. There are some handouts as well in that control panel that you can feel free to download and make notes on, etc. As you go through, you'll see some flow charts from a couple of the speakers, and you might really benefit from downloading that PDF so you have a bigger version of those flow charts that you can follow along with. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and introduce our first speaker, Amanda Carroll. Amanda is a senior project manager in the Water Resources Division at GEFA. In this role, she works with communities to provide low-interest financing for water and wastewater or sewer projects. She handles projects from start to finish. So she knows the ins and outs of the loan application process, loan development, technical assistance to the borrower during construction, and loan closeout, so the whole gamut. Amanda, the floor is yours. And while we switch out here to see Amanda, I will just remind folks to go ahead and submit questions in the question box as well. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you, Stacy. Again, I'd like to welcome everyone to the third GEFA 101 webinar. Appreciate everyone being here. Just want to go over a couple of objectives today. The first objective, we'd like to discuss the 2022 CWSRF Clean Water State Revolving Fund, CWSRF, and Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, DWSRF, call for projects. And then I will turn it over to Asmita and Kellyanne with EPD to discuss the State Environmental Review Process, or SERP. You will hear it called SERP probably throughout this presentation, but it is the State Environmental Review Process. Before we get started, I would like to do a quick poll question to kick things off.
Excellent. Okay, so the poll question, I'll just read it to folks. Did you attend the GEFA 101 session held in July? If so, your answer choices here are yes, no, or did not attend but watch the session on YouTube. And there's a little typo on that third option. But again, yes, no, or you did not attend but you watched the session on YouTube. And we'll go ahead and put into the chat box to the link if you didn't get a chance to watch that video, but you want to kind of access that later. It's on a YouTube channel. So great. So let's see the results here on that poll. 28% said yes, Amanda. 64% said no, and 8% did watch it on YouTube. So you have a captive audience here. You can give a quick refresher, I guess.
Okay. Thanks, Stacey. I appreciate it. So for those that answered no, welcome. And for those that answered yes, welcome back. So really quickly, who is eligible to borrow from GEFA? The entities that can borrow from GEFA are local governments, municipal corporations, county or local water, sewer, or sanitary districts, state or local authorities, boards, or political subdivisions, and non-governmental entities or NGOs whose primary mission is land conservation. So now I'll go into the call for projects. GEFA's annual call for projects will open September 1st, which is tomorrow, and close on February 28th of next year. Applicants of potential projects must complete a pre-application in order to be scored for principal forgiveness and to be included in the SRF Intended Use Plan, or IUP. Loan principal forgiveness eligibility is based on a project score and an affordability score. I will go into more detail on the affordability score criteria and the project scoring criteria in the next few slides. Also, all of this information will be included on our website once the call for projects opens tomorrow. GEFA also sends out reminder emails to all of those that have signed up for our newsletters. So if you haven't already, please go to our website and sign up for that newsletter. Here are the 10 affordability criteria we use to score each community for principal forgiveness. For each of the 10 criteria, the community receives a score between 1 and 4 based on where they fall within the quartiles. This would give a maximum score of 40 points. This affordability score, along with the project score, are both considered when allocating the principal forgiveness funds. So the project scoring criteria is going to look a lot different this year. GEFA has added an architectural and engineering procurement section, or A&E, and we have broken up the Readiness to Proceed section. So you can see under the A&E procurement, there are 3 selections. Only one option can be selected. So if you have developed a request for qualifications for the engineering services and/or posted an RFQ for engineering services, you would receive 5 points. If you have contracted with an engineering firm in accordance with the qualifications-based selection policy, you'll receive 10 points. And it says page 5 because this is part of a full document about the pre-application process. And so the QBS policy and selection criteria is discussed on page 5 of that document, but also you can go to our website and get more information. And then our final selection is contracted with an engineering firm for projects with construction costs less than $1 million and engineering costs less than $100,000, you'd receive 10 points. And underneath our Readiness to Proceed, we've broken it out into 4 selections. And here again, only one option can be selected. So if you've sent a project description to GEFA to request a loan number, you'd receive 10 points. If the CERT package has been submitted to EPD, 15 points. If the issuance of the Categorical Exclusion, or CE, or Notice of No Significant Impact, or NONSI, has been determined by EPD, it's 20 points. And if the CERT has been fully complete, it's 30 points. And so you can see here underneath the Readiness to Proceed, there are 30 points for having that CERT fully completed. And so this is why we wanted to have EPD on to go over that CERT process and discuss when information would be needed to submit in order to make that February 28th deadline. So here's where it gets different, our next 2 sections on the criteria. So here is the one for the Clean Water Srf Project Scoring. The compliance benefits section should look about the same from previous years, but we did change the project benefit section to include only 4 selections. And underneath the project benefits, you can select all that apply. So this year we have projects that will provide a redundant power supply to receive 5 points. Project will contribute to the delisting of a stream segment currently listing as non-attaining of designated use, will receive 5 points. If the project will reduce combined sewer overflows or sanitary sewer overflows, you'll receive 10 points. And if projects will address the faulty septic systems, receive 10 points. And then finally, for the Dwsrf project scoring, here again, the compliance benefits should look about the same from previous years. And we have changed the project benefits to include these 4 selections. And here again, you can select all that apply. So selection A, provide a redundant power supply, 5 points. Project will reduce water loss, will be 5 points. New water main extension to serve existing residents not served by a safe supply of potable water is 10 points. And projects to create redundancy and system reliability would receive 10 points. So that's it on our new project scoring. Again, this will be released tomorrow. You'll get an email or it'll be up on our website. And contact here, GEFA, the Water Resources Division, anytime if you have any questions. And now I'd like to turn it back over to Stacy to introduce our next speaker.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Amanda, for that overview of the process. And it's so timely because, like Amanda shared, the call for projects actually opens tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. Okay, great. We will, let's just make sure that everyone is still engaged with the control panel. I'd like you to raise your hand. So use the raise hand feature on your control panel if you are able to download the handouts that will help you follow along with the speaker's slides today. So we see some hands going up, which is excellent. Okay, great. We'd also want to remind you to go ahead and put questions in the questions box, and we are putting some information such as the links to the previous webinars in this series. So with that, let me go ahead and introduce our next speaker. Asmita Patel graduated with a master's in chemical engineering from Syracuse University in New York. She has been an environmental engineer with the drinking water permitting and engineering unit with EPD for 3 years now. So again, Asmita is going to focus on the drinking water section of this, and the next speaker, Kellyanne, will talk more about the clean water side of things. So just kind of listen out for that distinction, depending on the type of project that your community has in mind. Anyway, her drinking water permitting and engineering unit reviews and issues the permits to all the public drinking water systems in Georgia. They review and approve engineering documents related to drinking water and environmental determination for all the GEFA projects. So let's hand it over to Asmita. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. My name is Asmita Patel, and as Stacy said, that I'm an environmental engineer with the Drinking Water Permitting and Engineering program of EPD. Today, I'm here to talk about drinking water state revolving fund process from drinking water side. So let's begin with that. First of all, let's see what Dwsrf project program will assist. That will assist the water systems which are in need of infrastructure improvements to maintain compliance with Safe Drinking Water Act requirements and to protect public health. The drinking water projects which they submit to GEFA will undergo and complete environmental review in accordance with the state of Georgia's environmental review process. As Amanda said, Srf, you'll be hearing that a lot. So first of all, what Drinking Water Department of EPD will do is will determine whether the proposed project will have a significant environmental impacts or not. Depending on that criteria, we have 3 determination. First will be categorical exclusion. That is a CE, not notice of no significant impact, which is a non-Z, and environmental impact statement, EIS. Today, I'm going to talk more about CE and a non-Z in this presentation. EIS, we are not going to talk about that a lot because those are very rare projects, and it's and very complicated projects. So in 20 years, we have never issued any EIS. So let's just go in more detail about the categorical exclusion. So first thing in the mind will be what kind of projects are eligible for our categorical exclusion projects. The first category will be replacement of existing and construction of new water lines in already previously disturbed areas. That is more important, which is like previously disturbed areas. If there is any disturbance of the new areas, then it won't qualify for a CE. For example, I would like to say the water system with old distribution system, which is in a need to replace their water lines, or a new developing water system, which is there is an expansion or a growth of the community and is a need in constructing new water lines, will qualify for a CE. Next category will be improvements to existing surface or groundwater treatment plants. In these category, I would say that the projects such as change in filters, if they need something like it's a maintenance part where they need to change the filters or to make any improvements in their treatment plants, would qualify for a CE. The next category would be installation of new or replacement of existing backflow prevention devices or meters at existing customer service connections. Meter replacement is a very common project for GEFA because nowadays most of the water systems are trying to switch from manual meters to AMI. The next category that would qualify for a CE would be installation of security equipment at existing water system locations, land acquisition for source protection and integral to the project. The very last project that would qualify for a CE would be new wells or replacement of wells if ancillary to the existing water supply. I'm emphasizing on word ancillary because many times water system mistakens that drilling a new well would qualify for a CE, but they often miss the word ancillary, which is a backup well. Uh, for an instance, I will say if a water system that has only one well as their source of supply, and if there is any MCL issues and there is a need of a backup well to supply the water to their existing customers, they can apply for a CE, and it is only a backup well. So that is why I'm emphasizing on the word backup, because there has been many issues where water system comes to us and say, hey, this is a category which is a new well and it will qualify for a CE. And I'm sure water system would love to qualify for a CE because it's less time consuming. So just make sure that the project you're proposing has a backup well. Now, when we have seen the categorical exclusion projects, let's see the projects that are not eligible for CE. If a project is not eligible for CE, it will automatically qualify for a non-CE. So the first category will be the projects which will require issuance of a new or modification of an existing drinking water permit. For an instance, we can say that the projects which are in need to expand their treatment capacity, or in general, they are building a whole new water system, adding a new source. All these kind of projects will require us to issue a new drinking water permit, or we will have to modify their existing drinking water permit. So if there is any change in the, just make sure if there is any change where you have to submit an application to the drinking water department for the permit modification, then it is a non-Z. Second category would be the projects that have significant adverse effect on the quality of human environment. The projects that are directly or indirectly affect cultural resource areas, habitats of endangered or threatened species, environmentally important natural resource areas. And the last projects, the category of projects that would not qualify for a CE would be not to be cost effective or to cause significant public controversy. Now, since we know what are the projects that will qualify for CE and a non-CE, let's go through the process of let's go through the Dwsrf environmental review process. So whether it's a CE or a non-CE, first 5 steps will be similar. The first step EPD would recommend all the water systems or all the loan applicant would be that to contact GEFA. Submit a preliminary project description to GEFA so that the GEFA can generate a loan number and submit an environmental certification form to EPD. With that loan number and ECF, once the EPD reviews ECF, it will send an approved ECF back to GEFA. In these 3 steps, the only role of the loan applicant would submit and contact GEFA. That's it. Along with that, drinking water permitting and engineering unit will receiving and approving ECF will determine whether the project will qualify for a CE or a non-CE. Simultaneously, we will send the water system a letter, which is called as initial letter. If it is a new water system and have no idea about how the process works, initial letter clearly states that what are the processes, what are the next steps water system needs to follow. Let's start. Now we know if once EPD has determined whether the project is a CE or non-CE, they can follow the process after that. I know this is a little blurry, but as Stacy said that Dwsrf flowchart is already on the chat box where you can open the PDF and zoom out and see, we'll have a clear vision of that. So now in this process, EPD will communicate with the water systems. EPD will require a project description. What are we expecting in a project description is a project scope, and to describe that whether or not the project is going to affect the environment or not. The second thing we would like you to do is submit this project description to all the identified cross-cutter federal agencies. That would be HPD, which is Historic Preservation Division, US Fish Wildlife Services, and US Army Corps. We are also expecting all the water system to send us all the communication, copies of correspondence to and from the federal cross-cutter agencies to EPD, so that we will have everything in our records. To make the CE process less time consuming, we went ahead and divided those projects into two further categories. The first categories would be very simple, like a meter replacement, transmission line replacement, and generator replacement. These are very simple projects, and we know that it's not going to have an environmental impact. So what EPD does is they will go ahead and they will not wait for cross-cutters to comment back, and they can go ahead and issue a CE and send it to the water system to publish in the local newspaper for 30 days. And all the other projects, such as I can say as new backup well construction, new construction of water lines, any improvements to the surface or groundwater system, for those kind of projects, EPD would wait for cross-cutter comments. We'll see if they have any comments, then they can ask the water system to work with the associating federal agencies, have a mitigative measures. Usually that is why it is a CE, because they don't have any comments if it's a CE. And after EPD reviews cross-cutter comments, they can go ahead and issue a CE. And again, just like the other projects, send it to water system to publish in the local newspaper. Simultaneously, EPD will publish this CE determination on its website for 30 days for public review. We have now taken an extra step. We also publish those on Gov Delivery. You all can go online and search Gov Delivery and subscribe for it. You will have all the you can sign up for it and have all the notifications on any public notices which are published about the drinking water. After 30 days of period, if there are no adverse comments received, we would go ahead and just issue a final planning document. And if there are any adverse comments received, then we would ask the applicant to work with the agencies and resolve the issues. One more important thing that people do miss it is to send the evidence of CE to EPD. Sometimes what happens is the projects would take longer because we don't receive a publication evidence. To make life easier, we don't ask that to publish it for 30 days, because there are many communities, counties, cities which will only have local newspaper once a week, twice a week, and they won't have enough space to put this ad. So we will cut that slack, and we won't wait 30 days after they publish in the newspaper, but we will publish, we can issue the final approval letter after CE is on EPD's website for 30 days. Now, CE is a much simpler process, and it would take, I can say, about 2 to 3 months, depending what package we received, what documentation we received from the water systems. Now let's go, now we have seen the CE process. Let's go with the little bit more complicated process as a non-Z. Not complicated, but I can say a longer time-consuming process, which is a non-Z. The loan applicant, as we see in the CE applic process, the loan applicant needs to submit EID, Environmental Information Document. I have attached a link to my last slide where you can access to this EID. And you have to fill out the form, whatever it is, like if it has the departments, where is it going to affect the historic preservation division, it is going to endanger any threatened species. So whatever it applies, you can check and send us that document. Again, we expect loan applicant to submit this EID along with the project description to the identified cross-cutter agencies. So in this, again, the projects like water elevated tanks on historic property, water main near landfills, water main across the surface water, DOT right of way, or water mains across surface water will require, we know for sure, those kind of projects will require mitigative permits from the agencies. So be prepared if your projects fall under those category, you have to contact the cross-cutters, will require a mitigative measures, will require a permit, so be prepared for that. Rest other projects EPD will wait and review the cross-cutter comments. The extra step which differs non-C and CE is the loan applicant shall hold at least one public meeting. We expect to publish the meeting advertisement in the local newspaper at least 30 days prior to the meeting date. And once the meeting is held, the applicant should submit meeting minutes, agenda, attendees, and any other comments which was raised during the meeting to EPD. Once the EPD has reviewed cross-cutter comments, have received public meeting brief description, they can go ahead and issue a non-Z. Then the rest of the steps would be similar to a non-Z, to a CE, I mean. EPD will publish non-Z on EPD's website. The loan applicant needs to publish those non-Z on their local newspaper. And if there are no adverse comments received, then we can go ahead and issue the final planning document. And if any adverse comments received, again, loan applicant will need to work with the agencies and resolve the issues. I would say non-C process would typically take at least minimum of 60 to 90 days, and maximum it can go to 1 year, and just depends on what is the nature and the scope of the project. As I said, here is a Dwsrf guidance link where you can click and have a more detailed information about how this SERP of drinking water site works. This is a flowchart link. If you would like to go ahead, if you can't access the, if you want to access the flowchart later on in your handouts, then this is the link where you can contact. If you have any questions about the process, our drinking water permitting and engineering unit is very helpful. So you can either contact me. This is my contact information, my phone number and my email address. You can call me or shoot an email with any questions, or you could contact the drinking water unit manager, which is Peter Vogu, or the program manager, Manny Patel. That'd be it. Now let me hand over to Stacy.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Asmita, for going over that process. And we are getting some questions here, and so we are trying to sort of shunt them over to the relevant presenter, and we'll get to those at the end. But thanks so much. And now we'll move on to our next presenter. Kellyanne Sotilli is with EPD as well. And she actually is going to talk more about the clean water side of things. So let me just tell you a little bit about her experience. She graduated from George Washington University with a bachelor's in civil and environmental engineering. She has worked as an environmental engineer with the municipal permitting unit of the wastewater, and sometimes we'll say clean water there. We're referring basically to wastewater or stormwater projects. So she's worked with that unit, the wastewater regulatory program at EPD, for almost 5 years now. That unit is responsible for permitting, engineering, and environmental reviews for all the domestic wastewater facilities and systems across the state of Georgia. During her time at EPD, she has served as the GEFA coordinator for the program for the past 4 years. So with that, we welcome Kellyanne. You can take it away.
Perfect. Thank you, Stacy. Good morning, everyone. Sorry about that.
Everything looks good, Kellyanne. We see your slides.
Perfect. Thank you. So as Stacy said, I serve for the wastewater regulatory program, and we handle all of the environmental reviews associated with projects funded under the Clean Water SRF. So today I just wanted to go over kind of highlight some background on what our unit does, and specifically go over the differences in our requirements on the clean water side as opposed to drinking water, and kind of give you some tips on how you can navigate the process on our side and in order to meet GEFA's deadline at the end of February. So similar to the drinking water side, we have developed a state environmental review process. That process has been developed in accordance with the National Environmental Policy Act. That is a federal regulation which requires all projects that are funded with federal funding to undergo an environmental review, and it allows states to develop their own processes for conducting that review. So our SRF, similar to drinking water, allows us to issue one of 3 different types of environmental determinations, either a categorical exclusion, a notice of no significant impact, or an environmental impact statement. We will focus on the CE and the non-CE, as EISs are very uncommon for most of the things that we do here in the clean water world. I know as well that clean water tends to be kind of a confusing term. It's not as straightforward as drinking water. So what do we mean by that? As Stacy said, that's typically, I work for the wastewater regulatory program, so we cover wastewater treatment facilities and sanitary sewer systems. But really, clean water covers anything that is attempting to reduce or eliminate pollution to waters of the state. So you can see here that really we can cover a wide variety of things in our review processes, depending on the needs of a municipality or NGO. So I think the first step, informal step in the process for any municipality that has a project they're looking to cover under a loan fund is whether or not you qualify for a CE or a non-CE, as that drastically changes the amount of time in order to complete the process, as well as your submittal requirements in your review. So a categorical exclusion from the SRF is essentially defined sets of categories of projects that we predetermined do not have a significant impact on the environment. So that's going to be similar to drinking water, anything that's already pre-disturbed areas and will not support growth. So here we have a list of things that will not qualify for a categorical exclusion. I think that's almost the better question than do I qualify for a categorical exclusion. I just want to highlight a couple of these here for you. The first being upgrades to a facility to meet a new or more stringent effluent limitation. It's important to remember that that does not necessarily relate to the how intensive that upgrade is. In some instances, the upgrade may only be the addition of an aerator to your aeration basin. However, if that addition of an aerator is to meet a new ammonia limit, unfortunately, now you no longer qualify for a categorical exclusion. Additionally, I wanted to point out the increase in sewer main capacity or a pump station capacity. Quite frequently, we will receive requests for projects that initially their purpose is for rehabilitation of a sewer line or a pump station to support I&I. However, while you're rehabbing it, you've decided that you want to go ahead and increase the capacity of that line so you don't have to come back and do it again in 5 years. Unfortunately, since you are also increasing the capacity, this project will no longer qualify for a categorical exclusion. So I think up next, we have a poll question that should be coming through.
Okay. Yeah, the question, just read it for folks who may be following along on the phone. Do you currently have a clean water project that will require funding? And then there are several options of what type of project that might be. So rehabilitation, sewer or facility, extension/upgrade sewer facility. And then the third option is a new or expanding facility. Fourth is other, and fifth is not sure. I always like to encourage folks not to just click the not sure and try to challenge yourself to pick one of the other responses if possible. So we have the responses coming in. Thank you for submitting there. I think we'll probably receive, yeah, it's still coming in. Let's go ahead, and yes, we're sharing the poll results now. So 14%, Kellyanne said rehab, sewer, or facility. 14% also said extension/upgrade of a sewer facility. The most popular was not sure, but new and expanding a facility was close, as well as other. So quite a mixed bag there.
Okay, great. So a little bit of mixture of projects for rehabilitation will likely be covered under a categorical exclusion, and those extensions and upgrades would likely be covered under a non-Z. So we'll go over both of those specifically. So now that you know what your project might be covered under, or if you don't have a project in mind, what you might need if one were to arise. For both a CE and a non-Z, on the wastewater side, we do have a specific request form that we ask that you submit. It's a simple one-pager. This really just mostly has contact information, but most importantly, we are looking for your loan number on this form. So we cannot issue a CE or a non-Z until you have been issued a loan number by GEFA. So it's very important that you submit this form to us and have reached out to GEFA to obtain that. On the CE side, we are not looking for much information with that submittal. A basic project description, typically that should include your purpose of the project, scope, and qualifications for a CE, as well as map of the project area. On the non-Z side, since we are completing a more robust review of the project, we will require an SRF planning document. I'll go into that a little bit more on the next slide. Additionally, we require a public meeting. That public meeting must be advertised in the newspaper 30 days prior to the meeting. Then finally, this is a key question that I get quite frequently in regards to correspondence with other agencies, as this is quite different from the drinking water side. On our side, we do not require anyone to contact the agencies prior to submittal. However, we absolutely recommend that you contact those agencies as it will help expedite the review process. But again, this is not necessarily a required submittal. So what's required for an SRF planning document? We do have a full list of guidance on our website. There's the link there. I'm sure we can also share that in the chat. So that provides a whole list of things that might be required depending on the scope of your project. However, I just wanted to highlight a couple, not necessarily mistakes, but some common things that we either see missing or comment on in the hopes that we won't have to comment on it for you and we can help move the process forward a little bit faster for you. So number one is the flow and population projections. This is typically a pretty obvious thing to include for new and expanding facilities, but keep in mind that this is definitely helpful information for sewer extensions and pump stations as well, particularly if you have a known development. So say you're extending for a known industrial park that's coming to your municipality. We can, if you know what the flow is going to be from that industrial park, that helps navigate what the capacity of your pump station or of your sewer extension will be. So that's certainly helpful information to include to understand why you're proposing the project that you're proposing. Specifically in environmental categories as well, we ask that you remember to include for your direct impacts, not only during construction, but also throughout the lifespan of the project. So what is the impacts of odor from a digester or noise from a pump station? It's important to remember the fact that your project doesn't end when construction ends, that equipment and that service will continue on past construction. Additionally, we want to ensure that we're not only looking at direct impacts, but also the indirect impacts. Typically, that refers to growth in the service area. So for instance, if for stormwater, not only is there an impact of stormwater during construction, but also if there is new growth, there will be new impervious surfaces throughout the area that may cause an increase in stormwater. And what are we doing to mitigate that? Finally, as a reminder, we should also be including the impacts on cost to our municipality. And that's not just generally speaking, how much will the project cost, but also what are the impacts to the user? Are you proposing a change in your rate structure? Are there new impact fees that may be applicable to finance the project? So now that you've submitted your request on the CE side, the process is pretty simple. So you'll submit those documents that are required that we mentioned before. We will review that request, and generally we're mostly reviewing to confirm that you are actually eligible for a categorical exclusion. In some instances, we'll have some questions about the scope, in which case we'll likely send those via email if they're simple questions, and then we will route the CE for issuance. It's important to note as well on our side, as opposed to the drinking water side, our CEs do have to be signed by the director. So that's additional processing time that you should be aware of when you're planning your project. Once the CE is issued by the director, EPD will distribute and post the CE for a 30-day public comment period. We do post it on our website. We post it on GEOS, which is our application portal. And we distribute that via Gov Delivery on our listserv. We do not require that applicants publish the CE or non-CE in the newspaper. However, we do ask that you post it in a public location, whether that's City Hall or your offices. We do ask that you post it. Then after the end of the 30-day public comment period, if no significant comments are received, we will issue a Srf complete letter. For the non-CE side, you'll see here in orange that there are the biggest increase in time for the non-CE process are these three different public notice periods, each of them being 30 days. The number one way to cut time on your process is to overlap those first two orange public notice periods. So the advertisement for your public meeting, as well as the advertisement and request for comments from the cross-cutter agencies. So you'll remember I noted that we do not require you to contact those cross-cutter agencies. However, it is absolutely in your benefit to contact them yourself so that you can overlap that public meeting and that comment period to cut down on time and move this process forward as quickly as possible. I will also note that it is very likely that EPD will have at least one round of comments on your SRF planning document. So keep in mind that if your project is not submitted until the last minute and we have comments, it would be unlikely that we would be able to complete the project for you to meet GEFA's deadline. So once we go back and forth and we've received all the information from the crosscutters, whether you have completed that or we've received your public meeting information, and we have no further comments, we can issue a non-CE. Again, that has to be signed by the director, and then we will distribute and post that non-CE for a 30-day public comment period. Assuming that no significant comments are received, we will approve the document. If comments are received, then we will take that on a case-by-case basis. Finally, something else that's not on this issuance process that I did want to point out is if you are moving forward with a project that is for a new or expanding facility, please keep in mind that we cannot issue a non-CE until you have an approved anti-degradation analysis. So if you're trying to meet GEFA's deadline and you have not submitted an anti-degradation analysis for a new or expanding wastewater facility, it's going to be highly unlikely that we'll be able to complete this process by the end of February if we haven't already initiated and or approved that process. So something to keep in mind there as well. So with those issuance processes, the biggest question is, oh my goodness, how long does this take? The answer is it depends on the project, it depends on the scope. But generally speaking, in order to meet GEFA's deadline for categorical exclusions, we're going to recommend that you submit that request to us before the beginning of December. My caveat to that is, please by all means, reach out to us early if for any reason you have a question about whether or not your project actually qualifies for a CE. I would hate for anyone to submit a request on 12/1 and only for us to come back and say, I'm sorry, you don't qualify for a CE, and now you don't have time to meet, to submit a request for a non-CE and do all of those public notice requirements before that timeline at the end of February. So for a notice of no significant impact, we are recommending that you submit that request really as soon as possible, but by the end of September at the latest, submit that first request. If you have not yet published your advertisement for your public meeting and you have a project that you're ready to move forward on, I absolutely recommend that you go ahead and do that in the next week or two. If you have your submittal ready, but you have not completed that public meeting or you're still waiting to hear back from crosscutters, you can go ahead and submit that to us and we can go ahead and put it on the stack to start reviewing, just with the knowledge that we wouldn't be able to move forward without that information. We also would ask that you at least have advertised your public meeting before submitting anything to us, just so we know that that's on your radar and you're moving forward with that part of the project. So if you submit by the end of September, that should give us enough time to send you comments and so more time for some back and forth before we receive a complete submittal and are ready to proceed with a non-CE by same timeline as the CE of 12/1. So with that, here's our contact information for myself as well as the manager of the Municipal Permitting Unit. As I said before, if you have any questions at all about whether or not you qualify for a CE or a non-CE or the submittal requirements or cross-cutter agencies, please by all means reach out to us and we can help move that process forward for you. So that is all I have here. Let's see. I will.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Kellyanne.
Pass it back over to you, Stacy. Yes.
Yeah, thanks for that overview and those good tips. So a tip in there to overlap a couple parts of the process and cut it down by maybe 30 days. That's invaluable. So thanks for sharing. We'll invite all of the speakers or the panelists to come back on now to do the Q&A. So we have been trying to respond to some of your questions by just writing out a response. So for instance, one question was, are there any upcoming events about financing options? And so we put in there, make sure you check that out. There are a couple events that are free that are coming up on Thursday of this week and September 10th that's going to be focused on stormwater. So one of them is by the Funders Forum group in Georgia, and the other one is really going to be organized by GAWP. But yeah, feel free to sign up for those events. So that was one question. We have a question for the audience. Okay, so that was put in, you should see that pop up on your control panel, audience. But if you would raise your hand to answer this, right, do you think it would be useful to have a fourth webinar on federal requirements? So we had sort of advertised this as a 3-part webinar series, but there's a possibility that we can offer a fourth one. So yeah, so the federal requirements would be Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, or DBE, you may hear it called, American Iron and Steel, and Davis-Bacon. So if you think that would be useful to you or your local government, please raise your hand. And then let's get back to the questions for the panelists. Give them a little bit of a break there, right? And the audience is doing some work too. Okay, so let's see. We have a question that I think may be for Asmita, but it's probably for both Kellyanne and Asmita. So would SCADA qualify for a categorical exclusion? Who wants to help us address that?
Yes, if the sole purpose of, or the sole scope of the project is to improve SCADA systems, we can absolutely cover that under a CE.
Great. Okay. Next question. Well, Asmita, did you want to add anything there? Anything different on your end?
No, that's how it is. The SCADA system, depending on the project scope, it could qualify for a CE.
Okay, great. Thank you, ladies. Again, this question is addressed to Kellyanne, but it could be, I think, for maybe both of you all want to clarify the difference between drinking water and clean water here. Can you talk more about the newspaper notice for 30 days? So I think I'm going to guess here, you know, what do you mean by local, probably? And I know one of you said, I think Kellyanne, you said that it didn't have to be in a newspaper, it could be posted somewhere. So Asmita, do you want to start on that one, just to clarify the difference there?
Yes, we require a newspaper, local newspaper, such as like if a city is applying for CE or non-CE, we would ask the city to publish that CE or a non-CE in their local newspaper. For example, if it's a city of Cornelia, so they have once in a week, they have a newspaper called the Northeast Georgian. They can publish their notice on that newspaper, which will serve the whole community. And the only reason, let me clarify about that too. The only reason we are asking for newspaper clippings and publication because it's in our rule. And that is why we have cut the slack, because newspaper is old age. Nowadays, everything is moving online. So we know many communities only have a newspaper published once a week or twice a week. So that is why we don't force them to publish for 30 days, but we can issue the final planning approval after the publication of CE on EPD's website after 30 days. So
Okay.
newspaper clippings is just a requirement. I hope that answers the question.
Sounds pretty thorough to me. Thanks, Asmita. Kellyanne, you want to add anything?
Sure. So on the wastewater side, we only require the newspaper publication for the public meeting for a non-CE. And that needs to be in a newspaper that's going to generally cover the everyone who is affected by the project, so your entire jurisdiction. So if that's the city, if that's a county newspaper, whatever is going to be affected by the project. And that's just for the public meeting requirement. We don't require that you publish for the issuance of the CE or the issuance of the non-CE. That just needs to be posted in a public location.
Got it. Okay, thank you so much. I believe this next question is directed to Kellyanne as well. So since stormwater infrastructure is covered under the clean water, will stormwater infrastructure improvements to reduce pollutants migration be considered for such funding? So it's a little bit of a long question. Kellyanne, do you get the gist of that?
So, I mean, that might be a question for Amanda too, of what Amanda is willing to issue a loan for, but it's not uncommon for us to issue categorical exclusions for rehabilitation of stormwater infrastructure, or I recently issued a non-CE for a new stormwater detention pond. So those are things that we can review, but I'll let Amanda clarify what GEFA might be willing to approve.
Yes, GEFA will fund projects that are stormwater related. And one really cool project, really quick, that we have funded is something called a band-along project that you put at the inlet of a stormwater runoff structure, and it just catches all of the trash and the pollutants. And then they just come once a week and get the trash from that from the band-along, and I can send any of that information to anyone on the 2 projects that we've worked on. The first one I ever saw was City of Griffin, but that was something that was pretty cool. But we do stormwater projects.
Great. Yes, City of Griffin is always a stormwater pioneer or leader in Georgia. Great, thanks for that. And I just have to sort of admit to myself that I probably need these classes to read these questions properly. So let's see, we did the SCADA one already. Somebody is asking, what does PER stand for?
That's a preliminary engineering report.
Great, thank you. And that goes both clean water and drinking water side, yeah, depending on the type of project. Excellent. Another question we have here is, do drinking water and clean water have the same cross-cutter processes? And I know a lot of the webinar today was kind of focused on those differences between the clean water projects and the drinking water ones, but is there anything you want to reiterate or highlight regarding that?
For drinking water, the cross-cutters which we are mainly looking for would be Historic Preservation Division, U.S. Fish Wildlife Services, and U.S. Army Corps. And there could be extras such as like GADOT, Department of Transportation, because if there are some of the projects which will have in their right of way, so we would also need their comments too. And there can be other cross-cutters, and there is a list of all the cross-cutters which would apply to the projects in the Dwsrf guidance.
Excellent.
On the wastewater side, we would look at all of those in addition to WRD, as well as the regional commission would be the other two that we would look for as well.
Excellent. Well, those are the questions that we see here, and if there happen to be any others that I missed, we'll definitely reach out to you by email or something with those responses. But I think we had just enough time to cover the questions that came in. So thank you very much to our speakers this morning. Thanks to everyone who participated. You all were a great audience. Thanks for being interactive with us here. We do see your responses and your hands raised about possibly having a fourth webinar. We've shared with y'all a couple events that are related that are upcoming. And with that, I want to thank you for your time. Someone just asked another question here that we put the message in the chat as well, so everybody should have seen. If there is a fourth webinar, so the question was, if there is a fourth webinar, how will people find out about it? And so the best thing to do is to make sure that you are on the GEFA listserv, and so the link for that is in the chat. But we're dealing, at least in some parts of Georgia, with the remnants of Hurricane Ida. So stay warm, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. You enjoy the rest of your day.